I still remember the Christmas morning I got my GameCube. It was 2003, I was 6 years old, and I was incredibly hyped. The system didn't sell very well at the time, but the GameCube featured a lot of titles that had become cult classic Nintendo games. Like Mario Kart Double Dash, Luigi's Mansion, and my personal obsession, Super Smash Bros. Melee. I'm Sneaky Memer, and this is Plastic Wonders, a show where we do a deep dive on some of the very best hardware gaming has to offer. Oh! What? He's out. He quit after that. The GameCube did plenty of things wrong, but one thing that Nintendo nailed this generation was the controller. Nintendo has been known for their interesting controller designs for a while now, and everything from the Wii Remote to the Joy-Con genuinely feels different from the competition. But the era with the best execution of Nintendo's commitment to being weird is the GameCube era. This controller still feels like a regular controller. It's actually a lot more modern than their previous outing in many respects. But the GameCube pad takes the right risks to deliver something unique, with a gameplay that is particularly excellent on bespoke GameCube experiences. The GameCube controller isn't perfect, and it does miss a few key features here and there. But the excellence in engineering cannot be understated. The GCC may not be the very best controller ever made, but it certainly is my favorite. I'm going to start with the outer shell and the overall shape of the controller. This one I'm showing here is a black plastic shell with the Smash Bros. Logo in the center, but they were available in many other colors and variations throughout the GameCube, Wii, Wii U, and Switch's lifecycle. That's right, GameCube controllers were manufactured and sold in US Best Buys as recently as a little before the Smash Ultimate release back on November 2nd, 2018. And even though you can't walk into your local big box store here in the States and pick these things up anymore, you can get imports of Japanese variations of this very controller. With Nintendo though, you never know how long that's going to last. The controller's design language is committed to avoiding hard lines and right angles, with the entirety of the back of the outer shell being rounded, only coming to more traditional flat edges to give way to inputs. Even the front of the controller only features right angles on the D-pad and a few more sets of hard lines on the iconic octagonal stick gates. The rest of the buttons avoid hard angles completely. Taking a look at the profile of the controller, you can see the handles convex toward the bottom on the front and concave toward the top of the controller on the backside, as many good modern controllers do. But to brush off Nintendo's design decisions here in the early 2000s would be disingenuous. This concave to convex warping of the handles is a key component to a category the GameCube controller takes the crown in: hand feel. First, let me get something out of the way. In this section, I'm going to be talking about hand feel. And spoiler alert, the next section is button feel. These are two different categories. Hand feel deals with how the controller feels in your hand when you hold it. Ergonomics, natural finger placement, things like that. How the controller feels when you're not using it. Button feel is exactly what it sounds like. How the inputs feel when you use them. Things like travel and responsiveness, location and size in relation to ease of use, that sort of thing. It's how the controller feels when you are using it. Here's an example. SNES controller, good button feel, terrible hand feel. N64 controller, incredible hand feel. Just absolutely asinine button feel. You got that? Okay. Let's get into hand feel. The GameCube controller rests beautifully in the hand. On the left hand, the index finger rests perfectly in the crevice of the oversized trigger wings, and the other three fingers lay gently in the concave of the shell. The right hand can either mirror this placement, or can opt to rest the middle finger in the trigger, keep the index finger in the excellently shaped Z button. The Z button may appear small or difficult to press or find, but I found it to be a good compromise of being accessible and out of the way. The ball of your hand is found at the rear edges of the handles, and your palmar surface wraps gently around the face of the handles, being designed in a way to accommodate for a wide variety of grips and hand sizes. Again, this is a normal thing for modern video game controllers, but when it came to managing the ball and palm of the hand in the 6th generation, Nintendo's design was miles ahead of the competition. And this isn't a video about those other controllers, but the PlayStation 2 pad lacked the subtle curves of modern controller design, and the Duke was, well, it was big. And finally, we've come to the thumbs. The nerd's ace in the hole. The esports equalizer. The gamer's concealed carry. The thumbs rest naturally on the left thumbstick and the A button. Finding the full range of the stick is effortless and enjoyable, and the face buttons surrounding the A button are all easily reachable. The GameCube controller features that classic Nintendo plastic feel, with molding every bit as good as their controllers prior and after. We'll go around the controller starting with the triggers. Though both the 2014 and up models, as well as the original models from the 2000s, feature springs in the triggers, these springs are slightly different in each model. But as far as I know, that is the only difference between these controllers, aside from the longer cable on the newer model. The Melee community typically prefers the older, tighter spring design, but the difference is so slight that the average user is unlikely to notice a difference. These triggers are excellent and offer a massive, comfortable surface to slam your digits into. The responsiveness of the analog value is great, and the satisfying final click of the full press is superb. The Z button is nearly the weakest button on the controller, feeling just okay to use, but by no means is it a bad button. Z is a slender button sitting right above the R trigger, and aside from the fact that it's sorely lacking a sister button on the left side, Z has a relatively satisfying micro switch click and plenty of responsiveness in-game. It just defaults to being the worst button because it doesn't have much else going on. Moving around to the face of the controller, let's take a look at that start button first. Yep, not much to say here, but like all of the other buttons on the GameCube controller, the start key is nicely machined, it's nice and usable, and in a perfect location. Other than that, it's start. You don't use this one very much. On to the weakest link of the GCC, the D-pad. Is, plainly put, awful. Even the N64 D-pad was a league above this, and really that one wasn't anything as good as what you found on the SNES controller. This D-pad is small, mushy, awkward, and just about any other negative word you can throw its way. Again, the plastic here is well machined, but the execution is one of the worst parts of any Nintendo controller. But really, the D-pad is the single bad input set in an otherwise phenomenal package. Speaking of phenomenal, both sticks do feature that classic octagonal gate, but aside from that, there is actually quite a bit of difference. So each stick is a different size and shape, with a more traditionally sized dome and textured cap for the left stick, and what can only be described as a flat nub on the right stick. What's interesting about this design choice for the C-stick is that any game that would require constant and precise input with the right thumb, something like a first-person shooter, is made into an abhorrent chore. But because of that design, the right thumbstick is perfect for flicking motions that rely on the octagonal gate for direction. The C-stick is one of the more divisive choices on the GameCube controller, but because it's willing to lean so hard into its design, its true strengths shine through brightly. But that confidence in design does allow for the flaws to show themselves front and center as well. A recurring theme, not only for the GameCube controller, but for many of Nintendo's input devices. The left stick is... God, I don't even know what to say. I mean, honestly, using the left thumbstick on the GameCube controller is sublime. I truly cannot understate the elation of dash dancing around on FD and feeling that hard clack-clack of the side of the stick slamming against the corners of the octagonal gate. It is heavenly and plain old fun. And contrary to what you may assume, the GameCube controller does have a full 360 degrees of input on each of the sticks. Many Melee players will notch their controllers with extra stops in the gate to utilize specific angles of the left control stick, important in shield dropping, for example. But personally, I love that classic 8-stop gate. Both quick snapping motions and fine control are excellent and easy. And while I'm not usually a fan of convex stick tops, the thumb grip, travel distance, and overall ease of use of this stick is top of the line in my book. All of that praise and we're still not done. I saved my favorite button set on the GameCube controller for last. The face buttons. The GCC face buttons are strong plastic with an engraving for each letter, and also different colors for different buttons. But that's not what makes these buttons. The first thing people see when they lay their eyes or hands on a GameCube controller are these strangely shaped buttons under the right thumb. Most buttons on most other controllers, both before and after the GameCube controller, have been uniform in size and circular in shape. And while admittedly 2 of the face buttons are just circles, the combination of size, shape, arrangement, and color create a unique feel not found on any other controller. The A button is the largest on the controller and is a large centered green circle. The B button is a small red circle down and to the left of the A button, while the X and Y buttons are these weird gray peanut-shaped things that flank the A button at 80 degrees and 340 degrees respectively. Everything about the way these buttons are made shows that they were made with the way that humans interact with software in mind. Everything from a myriad of combinations being comfortable to hit, to the elegance of the slight offset of the Y button so your thumb naturally rests upon the key. And Nintendo likes to make getting into games as easy as possible for all audiences, and the size, placement, and color of the A and B buttons convey exactly the information they need to when a newcomer puts their hands on a GCC. This set of face buttons is the standout feature of the GameCube controller. All in all, we know the GameCube controller has a few misses, but what it lacks in versatility, it more than makes up for with a bespoke control scheme that shows excellent creativity, ease of use, and comfort. That's about all I have to say, but for the end here, I'm going to run through a list of my favorite games to play with the GCC in the style of a sports broadcast.
Jim, we're gonna have to start with Super Mario Sunshine. I mean, need I say anything else? God damn, that analog control in the water, the fat A button, the tight control on the left stick, it's just phenomenal. Hey, that's right, Bob, and don't forget about Duck Game. This one's particularly funny to me because on the Switch, Quack is mapped to the A button, and I just love that Quack is the biggest button on the controller. Fair enough, Jim. The next one up is Super Mario Strikers. It's another example of every single action being mapped to the exact button that you think it should be. This game is 60 frames per second of pure chaos and joy for your fingertips. You know, that's a great point, Bob, but honestly, how could you forget about Mario Kart? The Switch games that absolutely need that missing ZL or missing minus key can be a real pain, but guess what? Mario Kart doesn't need any of that shit, so you are good to go on this bad boy. There's no better controller to drift a kart around on that new coconut ball than the GCC. Jim, that's a really great point, but have you considered Metroid Prime? Bob, I want you to know that I have. But I have a question for you. Have you considered Kirby and the Forgotten Land? That new 3D Kirby game is truly excellent, has some pretty simple controls, and map beautifully to the GCC. Jim, why would we play any of these games when we could go straight back to playing Slippy Unranked?